Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, and this is a brief video on a repair of a Yamaha EMX66M powered mixer. So this mixer is repaired already, but I will go over what was wrong with it. What happened was that we were jamming down in his basement as we usually do. He has an electronic drum kit, and we had a couple vocals inputted here as well. And this is a great little mixer that he bought brand new about 15-20 years ago. I did give it a nice cleanup here. It didn't look this nice when I took it out of his basement. It's just been sitting in a dusty basement. All of a sudden we were playing and then it just started buzzing. There was no sound. It was just loud buzzing. Nothing that you did here on the pots here was stopping that noise, and none of the lights were lit up. So something happened. Usually when something like that happens, something in the power supply goes. With the mixer section removed, you can see the back section here where the power amp is and the power supply. And the power supply, just to be brief as possible, the two large capacitors, the 5 smaller capacitors there deal with the power amp section, and then also the positive 15, the negative 15 volts, and then below here there's another regulator that's heat sinked to the side for the 5 volts that runs all of the logic. The two regulators right here, one for the positive and negative 15 volts here, and on the 5 volts is below here. These were not the problem, but because Murphy's Law has really had its field day with me recently, I decided to change these out. They're not that expensive. There was like $22 to $25 for all these big capacitors. I just changed them out anyway. And then there was also these diodes right here, standard 1N4004s. I just replaced them with 1N4007s just for the sake that one of them had a lower value than it should have in spec. I changed all that out. That still didn't solve the problem. Then I moved out from the power amp section and the power supply section, which I knew I was getting good voltages from there. I went over to the front section here where the mixer itself is and started testing there. But in order to get to the back of this mixer, it's a little bit of a challenge because you have to remove the DSP board, which is located under here. That runs all the effects there. Once you remove that, then you can remove this metal panel to start getting to the back of the mixer PCB. When I pulled the ribbon cable from the DSP board, I just figured I'll try it out, as I'm pulling boards to see if that gets rid of the noise. Sure enough, as soon as I pulled that ribbon cable, the noise went away and the rest of the mixer section was working perfectly fine. All the channels worked. Great. That means that something else in the DSP section had just decided to fail. Now, if you guys need the service guide, I'll link to it here in the description below, but what wound up happening was the DSP section, so I needed to check to see if I got good voltage coming from the power supply. I wanted to check to see if I have 5 volts, negative 15, and positive 15. And what was missing was the 5 volt rail. The 5 volt rail was not on the DSP. Pulled the ribbon cable and I tested for 5 volts at the pin, which I believe is pin 17, and I had 5 volts. But as soon as I plugged it back into the DSP board, it went back to that nasty buzzing where I couldn't get any signal out of it. Something on the DSP board decided to fail. And a little bit of a needle in a haystack, but after probing with my digital multimeter, I found the 470 microfarad 25 volt cap. And here is a picture of where it is on the board, on the schematic anyway. And this particular capacitor, when I pulled it off the board, that was actually showing shorted. And I swapped that out. That's a pretty standard size capacitor, resoldered it to the DSP, and boom, this whole thing came back to life. Nice and quiet, even more quiet with the noise source since I had to replace the power supply capacitors. This board and now mixer is fully operational, good for at least another 20 years before it needs some major work again. But I was very happy to get that success. It's always like when you get something working and you didn't know what was wrong with it to begin with. Oh yeah, that was really, really nice to get that feeling. The only thing I'm waiting for now before I put it all back together, I just used some of this neutral curing silicone here that I got. I got it off of Amazon, just so that all the capacitors have some vibrational protection when this thing is being bounced around. That way, you don't have any. I'm just trying to move it with my finger. Now looks like the silicone is cured. I could finally put this whole thing back together and get this back to my drummer. But if you have one of these mixers, this wasn't a terribly hard repair. It did take me a lot longer to figure it out just because I was flying blind a little bit. But once I realized that the problem was isolated to the DSP board, then the repair happened pretty quickly. I'm not a technician by trade. I'm just a power hobbyist. So thankfully, that wound up being a righteous repair that I was happy to get some success there. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you have any questions, I know I was very brief on this video, but I wanted to at least report on this success. If you have one of these Yamaha mixers or any other powered mixer, this thing, you know, it's outdated by today's standards, but it still sounds great, and just happy to have it fixed and running again. And for a friend, that he was very, very happy with that as well. Thanks again, guys.